Well, hello! Welcome to the Wakely house. Isn't this a gorgeous flower bed in front of the house? This is flowers that are period correct for the Wakely home. The Wakely home is an 1840 to 1860 time, and we're here in lovely Wisconsin, and I'd like to show you our home. This is the original home of Mary and Robert Wakely. They did arrive here on the Wisconsin River in 1837. She had 2 children and she was pregnant with a third. The home was not ready for them, so they did stay for 2 years in a lean-to while the home was being constructed. I'd like to invite you to come to the Wakely home and the Wakely site to see all the exciting things we have to offer you. Thank you. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Well, here we are at the entrance to historic Pointe, Basse. We're at the parking lot. And this is where the sign is for the quilt garden that is sponsored by the Wood County Master Gardeners, and some of the flowers are out in front just getting ready to bloom. The volunteers come out here and weed it, plant the flowers, and take care of it. They also have flower beds up by the schoolhouse, and we'll be seeing that later on in the day.
Okay, when you come down to the Pioneer Festival today, the admission cost for an adult is $5. For students is $2, and children under 5 are free. All kinds of stuff to see and do. The kids get a piece of fur to trade at the trading post to see what other treasure they can come out with, and it's just a great family day and a great time to be had by all.
Well, we've left the ticket stand now, and we're headed down the trail. We're headed towards the historic Pointe Basse site. It's a nice, lovely trail here we've got. Well, as we're walking towards the historic Pointe Basse site, we come across the wooden footbridge here. That's to get us across Wakely Creek. And off to our right is a bridge that was built by the Wakely boys back in when they were here in the 1840s. It was made out of rocks, and the bridge is still there in existence from when they built it back in 1840, and that's how Wakely Road goes across there to get another way to get to historic Pointe Basse campsite. Well, here we are at Ma Wakely's kitchen. This is a chance for you to get a little bite to eat, something to drink, and sit down in the cool shade and enjoy the meal. They have a choice of hamburgers, hot dogs, some barbecue, they have dessert, they have lemonade, they have some sodas, they got root beer, some cream soda, and some black cherry soda. So I think it's time to head over and grab a little bite to eat and something to drink and enjoy the meal.
Okay, when they were fishing for fish that had teeth, like pike, northerns, and walleyes, brass leaders were used. A lot of these were found in inventories, and it's just a brass wire that an eye is twisted on the top. This is also wrapped around the shank of the hook, and these usually were anywhere from 9 to 18 inches long, and this prevented the fish from biting through the line that you were using. Okay, these are some of the different types of fishing setups that were used during 17th and 18th century. These here were used to catch cod off the shores of Newfoundland. These represent squid lures, and they're weighted, of course, with the large cod hooks. There were 2 to 3 men in a small boat. They'd go out with these hand lines, catch the fish, gut them out on the water, and then bring them back to shore where they had drying stations. And then they were loaded on bigger ships to go back to France, and they were heavily salted. This little thing here, here's a clam shell. This was hooked onto a line, and then at night the clams open up, and this was bounced off the bottom, and when it hit an open clam, the clam would close up onto this, wouldn't actually get hooked, but just would hold onto it, and then that was harvested, and button factories used the clam shells for buttons. And there's some various harpoons and spears for spearing fish, some ice chisels that were used during for ice fishing, and before 1720, the Indians used fish decoys. They jigged up and down through the ice and to attract the fish, and then they were able to spear it. The decoys then were made out of shells, and they had access to files and sandstone, and the shells were shaped into a small fish. Of course, the light glimmered off of this. This particular one here, the jigging stick is a rib bone of a buffalo, and the line is made out of cordage that was twisted from the inner bark of a basswood tree. Of course, a fish net. And what I use for floats are pieces of sumac. They're easy to hollow out. This is an example of the various types of hooks, sizes of hooks that were used. These here were made out of bone. These were tied to a line, and bait was buried on these. These were jigged up and down as when the fish snatched one of these, this would get stuck in its gills. And if you notice on all these hooks, there are no eyes. And we discussed that a little bit before about how you tied a line onto these. The back end was peen. They go anywhere from small panfish hooks all the way up to cod hooks. The most common hooks that I find in the different inventories are these hooks like this that are about 2 inches long. Those were called catfish hooks. And of course, in the ice fishing and on these boats that they're catching these codfish, they used a gaff to get a good grip on the fish when they yanked it out. Okay, the colonial fish hooks, the common ones did not have an eye on the end of the shaft. They were clean flat. And how you tied your line to this, you tied a knot on your line, was laid up along the shaft, then another piece of line was wrapped around it like if you were whipping the end of a rope. So when your line pulled on it, it tightened up even more, and this flattened out part jammed it. So that's how that stayed on there. And there's a display there of the different size hooks. But I've caught fish with these, and it's just, you don't really have to worry. I don't worry about them being tempered or not. A lot of them were made out of old needles, so they had to be annealed and re-tempered. But these smaller ones are pretty tough for this size wire, and they're easy to make for me anyway. I just have a small anvil, some files, and I'm able to form these to the shape that they would have been.
Well, here we are in the weekly kitchen. Looks like the ladies are getting ready to make breakfast. Would you like to tell us what you're doing?
Yeah, but first off, over here we're making strawberry rhubarb muffins for breakfast. Test out our new cast iron muffin pan.
Hi, and here we're going to be mixing our flour and our sugar. And we're going to use that with our strawberries. And we're going to have a little surprise this morning. Thank you.
Hi, I got breakfast here already. Scrambled eggs and sausage links and these little round donuts that I don't know how to pronounce the name of. What do you call them?
Edelskiever.
Yeah, these things.
Wow, I'll have to come back later on and try breakfast.
Oh, they're really.
My name is Matt Liebeck. I shoe horses locally, and I'm just doing this for fun today. But we're just here to show what blacksmithing is about, and I like to tell people that it's not just a dead art. It's something that some of us do every day to earn a living still. And I brought a few things to show how they're made. This is a horseshoe that's half done. You can see we've got the crease in one side and the heel hammered on. This is a chain that I made, forge welded all the links together and made a hook on the end. You just have to remember the blacksmith did everything from silverware to chains to, like Ken likes to tell people, to pulling teeth and doctoring.
Well, my name is Ann Kruger, and I am putting some warp on this loom. This is a rigid heddle loom, so there's not a lot of moving parts. This is the only moving part. Right now it's stationary. It's sitting here as I'm putting the warp in. And then half of the threads are going through a long slot, and the other half of the threads are going through the hole. So the threads that go through the hole when I'm doing my weaving, those will be the ones that move up or down. The ones that are in the long slot will stay stationary. So then that is how you would create that hole that I call a shed. And the shed is what you would pass the shuttle through from side to create your weaving. This is just a worsted weight cotton that I'm using, and I'm hoping to get it warped up so that I can weave some dishcloths.
Okay, well, as my sign says there, I am Bear Heart, and I say this is my trading post, and I am a tatted lace maker. I have different things that I've tatted. I have jewelry for the kids and tatting for the adults. I have been doing Weekly In since 1988, so I've been a regular here. I'm the lace maker.
Good morning, my name is Glenn and I'm from the Madison area, and I'm here at this festival this weekend weaving Navajo style rugs. Been doing this for about 25 years. And I'm in the finishing process of this particular weaving, but it's still going to take me about 10 hours to finish this weaving.
Well, women in the 1700s, this was a major project for them, is keeping their families clothed. So they spent a good share of their time spinning, weaving, and constructing clothing. So the very first thing you would have to do is shear the sheep and then wash and comb the fibers, and then you could spin it. You still have to ply it to make yarn. Now, a lot of spinning around in the 1700s was done on flax, especially in this area. Flax grew wild here. They would cut it and dig ditches, lay it in the ditches, cover it with water, and that water would rot the stalks. So after several days they'd take the stalks out and they'd beat them with sticks, and that would open up the stalks and they'd remove the fibers from them. And then they'd rinse and comb those out. What that made was linen fabric. They'd spin that and put it on looms, and that made the fabric. So most working class people didn't have a lot of clothing. A couple outfits, one for good, one for working in. The good clothes became working clothes when they wore out. They patched things, they handed it down. They wasted no fabric because it was such a lot of work to make it. You know, and unless you were the wealthier class where you could purchase it, that was a part of daily life.
Bonjour. Je m'appelle Madame Duque. And what I said is good morning. My name is Madame Two Tails, and I do toys and games. All the toys and all the games have been in existence prior to 1840. Zooming in on the table, you see my puzzles. Again, the wooden puzzle, of course, has no colors, no corners, but a wonderful puzzle for kids to put together. In the basket here, we have our button on a string. They're called whirligigs. We also have unique puzzles for adults. That one is like a tanagram, goes on the letter T. But if you come over here to my games, you can see we have a variety of games, for a lot of them for two-player. And one of the most interesting is here, the tabletop 9-pins. Now, 9-pins came through the northern colonies, and men and women of all classes enjoyed it. But what happened in 1636 is so many people were playing it, they outlawed 9-pins. But then we got the wonderful Americans and their creativity. They added 1 pin and called it bowling. So they weren't against the law. This board is for a game called Fox and Grease. This is 9-Man Morris. And what looks like tic-tac-toe was originally called noughts and crosses. And right now I have it set up for what's called 3 in a row, or Terry Lapili, where the X's are trying to get where the O's are, and the O's are trying to get where the X's are, without jumping. At the end there we've got Shut the Box, a long time favorite game to teach adding. Back in the box we have jacks, and if you look at the white looking things, which are sheep knuckles, supposedly the original jacks. One of the favorites of small children is this little bear on the shepherd's hook over here, and that's a climbing bear. And what we ask them to do is make him climb to the top. Many of them are trying to use it as a puppet, but actually it's a toy that teaches how to milk a goat or milk a cow, because the children had many chores, of course, in this age. And then over here we have some toys. Some of the favorites: Jacob's Ladder, which fascinates many. We also have our acrobats, which fascinates boys and girls. The dolls of the period, mostly cloth dolls. The one with the face, if you were very rich, that's the one you would have. We have our regular hoops with sticks that they can create any kind of journey with that, try to make a circle around. And then lastly, we have 2 pieces of wood over here and a rope. And this is the land version of a game called Cat and Mouse. It's usually played in canoes, and the long rope is kind of like a tug of war, but they were trying to get the other person in the water. This is the land version, and if you notice, that one rocks, so you have to have balance. So yes, I enjoy all my toys and games, and I hope you would come to Pioneer Days or Pointe Basse and enjoy it with us. Thank you.
Okay. A little more. First we put the twist into the strands, and now we start 3 strands into one. Now we're laying on this end, laying the strands together. We have a rope.
Bill White, and I do a fur trade demonstration. But what I add to it is I have a lot of the all the articles that the native people would have had before the fur trade came in, before they could trade for more modern stuff. So these are all the things they made. They didn't need the European goods, but in some cases it made their life easier, especially for women and men. And I'll talk about that in a second. But you see here I've got all kinds of stuff, and I'll just point out a couple things. Over here we have a buffalo stomach that they used to cook in. And then when the fur trade came in, it made it easier for the wife, because I could only cook in that maybe 6-7 times before it fall apart. But then if I could trade for a nice metal pot, my wife liked it much better because I could cook over and over and over this, and I could cook over a fire. There I'd have to put hot rocks in the water to heat it up to put my dried berries and meat and stuff in. So it made it much faster and much easier to have a pot like this here. My eating instruments I would take and make out of everything came from nature. So a turtle shell became my bowl, a buffalo scapula became my plate. Then from the buffalo, the horns, I would have my drinking cup, I would have my spoon, and I'd have my ladle for scooping up out of my porridge out of there, or my stew out of there. Other parts of the buffalo, I'd take the buffalo bladder, and I would tan it, and this would be for collecting water. I go down, 6-7 of these go down the stream, the river, and collect my water and carry it back to the village in this. I could also use it for making sewing kits out of it. I have a friend of mine who made a beautiful sewing kit. All our sewing stuff goes in the buffalo bladder. So everything for the buffalo they used. In the wintertime, my wife would make me a pair of moccasins with the buffalo hair to the inside, much warmer, to keep my feet nice and warm. Over here I have a porcupine tail. The tail doesn't have the barbs on it, so I don't get stabbed with it, but I'd use this for a hairbrush. And just a couple other things here. I'd use the shin bone of a deer. I can make a nice awl for punching holes for my leather when I sew it. And I could also carve it down to like a point like this here. I'd put in my spear points and arrow points I can make out of the bone. I'd also make those out of flint too, or different rocks. And in the shell like this here, I can take a rock and I can sharpen it up pretty good, and I can cut pretty good with this. I can cut myself if I get it sharp enough. So I'd use that. Cordage, I would take cordage like this here. You can use dogbane, you can use basswood, you can use milkweed. I use willow, the inner bark of a willow. It's like this here, and then I make it into rope like this here. I would take it off the tree, peel the inner bark off, get a pot, soak it with wood ash and water for about an hour. It changes color, but it makes it stronger. And then when I want to use it, I'll wet it up, and it gets like spaghetti, and then I can start making my cordage out of it, or my rope.
Okay, my name is Miss Kathy. I'm a volunteer here at Pointe Basse, the school. We have tours and information about the schools. I'm the school teacher. Back in the day, I would have been single, young, about 16, and making about 25 cents a month. I'd be living with other farmers around the area and coming to school and doing all the chores that teachers needed to do, cleaning chimneys, cleaning bathrooms, getting the water, making sure the school is ready for the kids when they came in.
Hi, I'm Barb Kleifkin. I am a master gardener, and this is our quilt block garden. Every year we choose a quilt block to use our annual flowers in a design, and this year we've chosen the tulip, which you can see over there. Design is hanging up there, and we just planted this about 2 weeks ago, so the flowers are not showing up as good as it probably will in a few weeks, but I think it shows up enough so that you can see it. At the same time, we bring our quilts out during the festival so people can see what quilts are and the art of quilting. So we're trying to encourage gardening, and at the same time we're trying to encourage quilting, both which are historical. And at the same time, the gardening is trying to teach people to feed themselves. I don't know if Jim has been over by the historical garden or not, but we have the vegetable garden. Jim might go over there. We have a vegetable garden over on the other side, which goes back into the 1800s and the type of vegetables that they grew back then. When there was no food and no grocery store, you just couldn't go down and get it. So we have the quilt block garden, which you see here, and we have the birds and butterfly garden, which is right next to the school. If Jim switches his camera to show the one. This was all weeds about 5 years ago, and the ladies just went nuts. And pretty much with donated flowers did this awesome garden. And the birds and the bees and the butterflies just love it. And then over here, they did the same thing all the way around the school. They have flowers in here, and then they have hostas down here, so it's made it a lot more attractive of a place. And at the same time, just about 2 years ago, we added the Monarch Waystation. And one of our gardeners, Annette Boden, she does this herself. Her husband made this butterfly that you see here out of wood. And one of our other gardeners, whose husband is Mark Clavine, made this beautiful butterfly that we have here. And he makes garden objects and sells them. And this Monarch station feeds the butterfly and it feeds the caterpillar, which are two different things that the butterfly needs. So come back again in a few weeks when everything is large, and then you'll really appreciate it.
I'm Ray Glazner. I'm a former teacher and historian. I'm a consultant to several major museums like the Smithsonian and a few others. And I've been retired since 1988, and I go to events like this, living history events. I even run one myself in August, and I represent a Scottish trader who's old and was a former soldier at one time and is now out on the frontier running a trade goods store called Dry Goods. I'm out and I sell things that you would find on the frontier in North America, Canada, and the U.S. And I try to be as correct as I can as to what I'm carrying. I carry a little bit of everything, although I'm trying to go out of business. It's just not working. Every time I try to go out, I end up with more stuff. But I want to teach, because I believe that if we don't learn the lessons of history, we will repeat them. And I spend as much time as I can teaching people about our history and our culture and everything else.
As people lived in the older times, they needed to get out in the wintertime to be able to to get out to do things. Sometimes it was hunting, sometimes it was getting around. And one of the ways they got around was with snowshoes. Traditional snowshoes they used were looking something like this. This would be made out of, these in particular are made out of white ash with rawhide. And so I was able to learn from a man who's been making them for 60 years, and I'm just working on lacing a set of snowshoes that so that when they're done they will look like this. This particular style would be a Michigan or a Maine style, and it can be used like as I mentioned for going out and into the woods. And I also have a number of different styles here. If you look here, I've got some Hurons, I've got some Green Mountain Bear Paws, I have a set of Ojibways, and then a number of other pairs of the Michigans and or the Maine style.
Well, it was important in Wisconsin to have warm clothing for your family. So women spent time spinning wool into yarn and then knitting warm items for them. So a woman's hands, I think, were never idle. So lots of probably socks and hats and mittens, and this is a pair of baby booties knit from alpaca.
Well, here's the Astro Gardener's heritage garden that they were talking to us about at the schoolhouse. We'll just kind of go up to the fence here and see what they have on the inside. So they have some nice heirloom tomato plants there. See a few other plants and stuff that are just coming up. So looks like they may have a good harvest here this year. The beans are coming up, getting ready to go up the pole. Got some dill there, an onion. And down here they have some herb, a little herb garden. Well, there's the Wood County Master Gardener's 20th anniversary sign. They've been in existence for 20 years, and so they're celebrating their anniversary year this year. And here's some more of their herbs that they have growing. Got some nice winter onions going right there, and some horseradish. And over here we have some peas that are getting ready to climb up the little wattle fence. Here we are. They're cutting up with an ice block. And I believe they're going to get ready to put it into the ice grinder so they can grind it up into smaller pieces and then end up putting it into a round for making ice cream. So let's kind of see what he does here. So he sawed part way through the block. Now he's got his little chopper and he just put that thing off, and now he's making it into smaller chunks. Now these chunks now, we'll take that and it'll go into a grinder. So he gets to grind that up now, and it comes out the other end as smaller little cubes. So now you can see right around the outside edge of the bucket there, that's where the ice, little ice cubes end up going so that they can make the ice cream. So it's just a constant matter of turning that crank, and it takes them about 20-25 minutes before ice cream is available. And can't wait for that to get done so we can have a little sampling of ice cream.
We are shaving ice. It's basically an ice plane. And it's turning it into like an early snow cone. And if you can pack it, just turns right into snow, like a snowball. And it works quite fast. You'll see in a minute here, I can fill that reservoir right up. And he shaves the ice down and turns it into what would be early version of a snow cone.
Barry Kruger. I live down by Mauston, and I've been a blacksmith for 45 years as a hobby, not as a job. I didn't want to do this for a living because I'd have to work 10 hours a day next to a forge 6 days or 7 days a week, and I didn't want to do that. So instead I was a heavy duty truck mechanic for 45 years. So it was almost the same except a couple hundred years old. I burned coal in my fire. for what I do, that's perfect. It's a hobby, so I don't do a lot of big work. I don't like doing fancy work because then you have to charge a lot for it. I can do it, I just don't enjoy it. I can make the leaves and the roses and the acorns and the flowers and all that. I just don't enjoy it. Most of my product is camping related, primitive camping or modern camping, both. I do a lot of piece work for people making special things. I'm working on a chicken roaster right now. This is part of it, and I have to make about 2 more pieces to finish the set, and then I'll have that one done for today too. Let's see here. Need a little bit of material. I'm a traditional smith, which means I heat it and I beat it. That's what blacksmithing means, is to strike the black metal, or hit the black metal. So, modern iron workers don't generally use a forge, they don't hardly use a hammer. They're using hydraulic equipment and bending tools and things to make their iron work, and they're trying to make a living at it. That's why they do it that way. A traditional smith can't put out nearly as much product a day. And as far as being fancier, that depends on how much time you want to put into any piece. It can be fancier, it can be pretty plain either way, depending on what you're doing. Most of my stuff goes to campers, so I don't like doing things that are just going to hang on a wall or sit on a table. I want to make things that people actually use, and that's my fun of it. Alright, let's get this a little bit warmer. I'm going to bring this up to about 1400 degrees. My metal here is mild steel, so it'll burn at about 1550. So I have to be a little careful. The only way to tell the heat is by pulling it out and looking at it, and I'm pretty close to where I want to be. Every time you put it back in the fire, that's called a heat. So sometimes I'll have to heat a piece 8 or 10 times before I'm done with it. As long as you don't burn it, you can still keep heating it. Doesn't really matter until you get it too hot, and then it's no good. So you have to keep it down. It's almost hot already, right there. 10 seconds of heat's all it takes. I'm using a Bellows. I actually built this Bellows in 1975 when I was first getting started. My forge is a little rivet forge. It's probably 100 and 120 years old, somewhere in there. The anvil is at least 100 years old, 140 pounds. I've been told that it's a very good brand name, but I don't have any name or number on it to tell. But it's a very good anvil, I already know that. I like to run my metal kind of warm, so I have to be careful I don't burn it, but it makes it a lot easier to do what I want. These small pieces cool off so fast, I've only got about 10 seconds to hammer on it, and then it's too cold to hammer. Still plenty hot to burn you if you happen to grab it, but it's down below 1,000 degrees, 900 degrees. That's about as far as I want to go as far as cooling off. A lot of the time is spent tending the fire to make sure it's going to burn hot enough and clean enough. Right now she's burned down to pretty much all coke. That little bit of yellow flame is the impurities burning out of the coal. Oil, sulfur, and who knows what else. Sometimes it'll be a blue flame, sometimes green, sometimes yellow. Getting ready to put a twist on there, 90-degree twist. So what I'll do is heat it up where I want to twist it. I'll put the one end in the vise, and the other end I'll use that little wrench to turn it around. And since it's quite hot, it'll go real easy, and it should be a fairly easy twist. For about 8 inches between these two pieces. We'll go a little bigger.
Historic Pointe Basse would like to thank everyone for making Pioneer Festival a success. We look forward to seeing you at our next event in July. Check out our website at www.historicpointebasse.com. We hope to see you at our future events.